so the recording is start. All
Mhm.
right. Okay, so good evening, everyone. So it is so pleasure to have Anthony today as our UX club guest, and we it's a Anthony Conlon is a distinguished figure in the realm of the UX and blending the creativity with the analytical rigor to craft unforgettable digital experience. So I hope you guys already get ready to uncover the science behind UX design as Anthony share his insight and expertise. So welcome, Anthony, and thank you your time to join today's session.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Okay, so some question here is some people think have the questions. What's the difference between the product design and UX design?
Yeah, I feel like it's like a kind of like an industry like label sort of like problem, almost like a branding issue. I feel like they're very related. They're very, very similar. If we had to get like a little bit more pedantic into it, like most of the jobs you're going to search for, they basically call it product designer now, from what I've seen. There are a couple places that still use like the term UX design, but for the most part, it's like product manager, product designer. Like there's like a nice little relationship there. Um, I would say like if you had to like break it down, a product designer will probably like own more of the life cycle and more of the process of like making these things, like from research to defining those requirements, making the UI, testing it and delivering it. Whereas like a UX designer might be more focused on like a slice of that, mainly around like the early portion of the design process, like doing some research, maybe not, but really like figuring out the structure of something. So they might like fall off from like the visuals, or they might not like do the final delivery. And for my time in the industry, I actually have had both titles. So like when I was working at Food Network, for example, like I was a UX designer. Specifically, I wouldn't do the final visuals for most of my projects because I would partner up with a visual designer who would take it and like that visual designer skill who's like really good at branding and typography and like graphic design partners with like my structure, my logic, my ability to like build these systems, and together we work together to build that product. So I feel like if the question behind the question is like, what should I search for? What should I do? Who should I like try to be? I would try to like focus on the product design full life cycle experience for that and search for those jobs and brand myself that way.
Got it. Got it. Because I heard some people say that for the UX design is more focused on the user perspective, so they have to like not really intend to the business or intend to put more effort on the engineering teams kind of it. They will put more focus on the user. However, the product designer is like a balancing. They have to focus on a different perspective.
Yeah, I think
Is
that's
that also a
yeah.
case?
I think that's another great way to sum it up. Like you focus more on like a slice of the experience, whereas like the product designer has that balance of like, what does business want? How do we make money? How does this like fit in to the rest of that equation? Whereas like the UX designer might like specifically focus on like the U and the user experience, right? So
Mhm. Okay. Another question is like your journey seems to have taken from economics to the product design,
mhm.
and with a significant detour into education along the way. What's inspire or motivate you to transition into the world of the product design and later into education?
Yeah, I've been all over the place. Yeah, I started in law and economics. I got a master's degree in that sort of stuff, and man, I don't like it at all. Just like wasn't for me. I don't know how I got on that path, but so I did that for a few years, and I did a 180 after a couple positions, and I said to myself, like, I went back to like what I wanted, which is like to make games. Like I love games. If that's not clear, it's subtly reinforced on all the calls I'm on. But yeah, no, I love games, and I made my own game company where I had my own like business making some of these games actually that are behind me, and I would go from concept to completion to make those experiences. I loved thinking about the user experience of like this entertainment, how people use it, how they like interact with it. So I started getting some of the skills within like research and like having someone like sit in front of a product I made and like test it. Um, from there, I bounced around a little bit more, but more firmly landed at Nickelodeon, which is a children's media company. You might know the show like Blue's Clues if you grew up on that, or whatever. Bluey would be a good analog now, but these like sort of like shows for kids that have this like call and response sort of format where like the TV shouts at you and you shout back at it. That experience, Nickelodeon desired to be digital on like phones and stuff, right? So now you can interact with it and touch and tap and swipe, and that is a user experience, and that's where I got my real exposure to that by working through games to develop those digital experiences. Loved it, so I decided to do more of it and slowly pivoted my way into UX design, then product design, and then on a separate spare track, doing the education piece of that because I'd always been teaching, tutoring, mentoring. Some of those side jobs and the transitions that I've had were tutoring. So like bringing those threads together, talking about like the career that I have with the teaching that I've done.
Got it. Wow, that's really awesome.
Thanks. It's been fun.
Yeah, that's really cool. Okay. Another things is like your book, The Art and Science of UX Design sounds intriguing. Could you share what's motivate you to like write this book and what readers can expect to gain from this book?
Yeah, absolutely. So I wrote the book for you and for people like you who are trying to get into this industry. Essentially, when I was making my transition, I went to General Assembly boot camp to fully make my way. And when I was making my transition and I was like reading all these materials about product design and UX design and everything, it was like awesome to see how these books like really inspired me to like do this work of like you really think about these people, you design for them, you create for them. But then I would always like sit down and try to do it myself, and I'd be like, well, how do I do this? Like I read this entire book about this process, and like I don't actually know how to like do these step by step so that I can like get an outcome that I want for my projects, and that's why I wrote the book, like step by step, like that's part of the title. A step-by-step guide to making experiences. The way that I've scaffolded and structured this is like I'll give you that inspiration, that theory, like why we do this, and how it can benefit you. But then I will take you through a project, and I'll show you like a process that you will complete, and I'll give you examples of that process. So it's like, here's the inspiration, here's the process, here's how the process works, here's an example of that process. Then I invite you, the reader, to do the process. So it's actually like a workbook. I'll give you like a challenge, a meta challenge to work through the book, and you do each of these little challenges that build into a portfolio presentation or a portfolio project, essentially, if you complete all of these exercises. They're all standoff one of if you want, but if you do them all, you'll end up with a project. And then I show you like what good looks like by giving you what I did for that project. And it's not an answer, it's not the answer, but it is an answer for what it could look like for you. So it's really like a step-by-step process through the design thinking process, and then like each of those like elements has their own flow and rhythm for like how to like actually do it and see examples from it. So that's kind of why I wrote it. It's like the design book I wanted when I was learning, and I thought other people would want it and be able to benefit from it.
Well, I think if that's 2 or 3 years, I think right now I definitely need a kind of book if I'm because I have a kind of experience when I'm working in the place only one designer, one UX designer, and you don't know how to play with the design things and that all team understand what you're doing right now. So with that the book like workbook, you can just step by step and understand what is the outcome. That will make me feel confidence kind of thing.
It's
I think that is really helpful.
check it
Yeah,
out on Amazon. It's there if you want to see it. But
sure.
it's yeah, it's a book that like it feels pretty personal to me, So
Mhm. Awesome. Okay. With your extensive experience in product design and mentoring, what are some common challenge you observe aspiring designers face, and how does your book address or mitigate this challenge?
Yeah, so some things that I see from designers, you go through like this academic process of like, here are all the steps, go do it for your projects. Then you get into the industry and you're like, how do I navigate this? I think some elements of the book help you navigate that. I have like sections that talk about working with other disciplines, for example, of like how to work alongside product managers or work alongside developers or stakeholders and like present to them. I give guidance in the book about the portfolio, which is like unfortunately like 80%, 70%, some large percent of of getting you a job, right? Like a lot of it's like your resume, essentially, our version of a resume in this field. I see like a lot of aspiring designers in their portfolios and like their work and materials, for example, because of, and I think this is because of the product of how it's taught. Um, they kind of just like present their materials one at a time and saying like, I did this step, I did that step, I did that step, with the assumption that just like by presenting the steps and deliverables, that it it is like what people want to see, and we do want to see that like as someone hiring you, but we kind of want you to like connect it together and connect it back to the problem, and it's not just about like here's my wireframes, here's like my flowcharts. It's more about like I made this so that I could, get this outcome, understand the users, like whatever. So like being able to tie things back together is something, that I try to offer in the book, and something that, I see even my students like struggle with that from time to time. So, one of my recommendations for aspiring designers would be like, you have all these tools and these processes, try to connect them together and try to use the right ones for the right job, and like convince and tell me why like you're using them at that point.
Got it. That's really helpful, especially right now. Many students are looking for an internship, and
It's the
they
season.
have some portfolio project, and they actually still struggle to like how to modify, how to value which one is more important to articulate in their portfolios. Yeah, thank you. I think right now as a lot of students joins more, and if you guys have any problem, you can just like asking and only any problems you have, and because this is a very exciting moment that we have Amazon designer and a professor here. So I think it's a best chance to have some conversation with him. So if you have any question, just open your mic and then talk. Yeah. Hi, Penny. Oh, you're mute.
Sorry, I was muted. Hello, hi guys, hi Anthony, and hi Adam. So good to see you again. My
Yeah.
name is Penny, and currently I am a full-time UX designer working for the School of Human Ecology on campus here at UW-Madison. So I do have a question about product design for you, Anthony. Is that right now my full-time job is kind of like working on UX and content strategy for a website. And I also have a side project going on that I'm working as a product designer for it wouldn't be a game, but it's more like a gamified education app. And I am wondering, what do you think is the difference as a product designer when you're designing for like an enterprise software compared to designing for a video game or a gamified software?
Yeah, no, I think, it can really change based upon like obviously like your users, like your end goals, what you're trying to accomplish there. When you think about designing for like, like a more serious context versus like a more, fun, jovial context, that's going to like affect, your design, whether it be in the visuals or like your copy or like even just like some of the features and functionality, that you're going to have there. For games specifically, I actually think like game design is like very similar to like UX design. It's like almost the same. You understand your users and like try to like unblock them and whatever. Um, but for game design applications, you almost have to like design friction, so that it's like a little bit more entertaining to like get past those problems. It's like
Mm-hmm.
for UX design and like enterprise design, I would say, you're trying to like remove problems, but like for gamified things and like games, you're trying to like create problems so that your own users can like remove them.
Yeah,
So,
that's a good point.
so yeah, like you might want to think through that lens of like what are like challenges that I could present my users with in this gamified
Mhm.
context that are like problems for them to solve so that they can feel that agency and joy in overcoming them without them being like too frustrating. I don't imagine you'd want to like make Dark Souls, for maybe, I don't know what your platform is.
Yeah.
But like, how can you like design these like little moments of opportunity for your customers to like overcome the challenges you put forth?
Okay, that's really good to know because one of my most One of my challenge I'm facing is I feel like the motivation for the users for games and enterprise are just so different. I'm trying to set up this user research and find out how to motivate users to use our app. So I think you just gave me a really good point and some pathway to think about. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. One other thing I'll add there, like we'll just take like two examples, right? Like if you think about a game like Fortnite, right? Like you come there to spend time, and, like have fun, and like connect with others, and like whatever else, and like show mastery of like the systems within that. If you think about a software like Jira, you don't want to hang out in Jira. Like you use Jira to like accomplish a task and like get something done, you know? And both these things are great and they're very valuable for what they do. But like I would think through that lens of like, why is the user coming here and how can I either like accelerate them or like, you know, incentivize them to spend time.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks.
Of course.
Okay. I want to put back to the portfolio because I'm just thinking about if you want to highlight something or say something more instead of just I do this, I did this. Is that if you're doing the project, it's more like know-how or is, for instance, maybe finance or electric vehicle or power electric management kind of things? Well, that's too hard for the audience or reader to understand, so that they will feel too many words that you are trying to, okay, because the reason behind this, I have to do this kind of things.
Yeah, I may not fully understand the question, but if the question's like, you know, like the balance of how much I put in here and how do I like everything, yeah. I think like uh with respect to that, like it depends on your style and what you like as a you know designer and what you want to have in your portfolio. For me, I write like very long case studies because I like presenting all the information and showing my breadth as a designer, like trying to solve the problem. It's probably why I work at Amazon because my case studies are like pages long and we love documentation. I'm sure Adam can attest to that, right? So like you know we just have like a ton of writing and we love that. I think it's okay if you have like a shorter case study and like you want to focus on your visuals and like just communicate that. Like some companies really love that. I believe from what I've heard, Meta loves just seeing the designs and like that's what they want to see and that's what they like evaluate you on. It's up to you what your style is. Me personally, I like giving a lot of information. Most people are going to come to your portfolio and scroll through it in 2 minutes anyway and not read it at all. So like it doesn't really matter how much is there. But by putting that much information there, my strategy is like I've thought very deeply about this. And I hope that that comes through with my materials. And you can like go to my website if you want. It's firstnamelastname.com and see some of those case studies there. So I think what's more important is like as you're reading or as you have like whatever style you have, like I'm not lost and I understand what I'm consuming as I go through it. So like if you have a short one, you know, use or a long one, use like your titles and your imagery and your visuals to like break up all your text and like communicate the story and like link back to the customer. So I have this one case study where it's like you know, we tried to solve this problem around like video streaming. Our users wanted it to be simple and like I keep that thread throughout the entire thing, even to the end when like I offer the testing results. I say with a quote from a user, this was simple. Like you just have to like connect these threads back to the problem throughout your materials, through visuals and your headings and whatnot. So I think it's more important to have that story.
Got it. Yeah, I saw that video on your portfolio as well, and is really like I want to know more, and I will keep scrolling down, and I don't even find myself like, oh, I'm already read the kind of things. And I feel it's more like a storytelling skill. That's how you make an audience read your like article more engaged with yours.
Like I'll read like See Spot Run and I'll read Game of Thrones, right? Like it just has to be like a compelling thing that like you incentivize people to continue through that, and those narratives have to connect.
Got it. Thank you. Another question is like, give your background in the economics, do you find any intersection or parallels between the principles of economics and the field of UX design? If so, yeah.
I do. One comes to mind. In economics, we're taught to believe that the markets move rationally, that people like behave rationally, that like incentives are like clear and that information is like very transparent and there's no like market friction, but like that doesn't happen in reality, like so like that idea and ethos of like your users aren't operating with perfect information, or they might be in the context where like they can't use your product perfectly. Like what if they're holding one hand on the subway or they don't have connection or like whatever. It helps me think through like different scenarios of edge cases and interactivity, I feel, by having that exposure. Also the concept of like utility. I really like that concept in economics. Utility is like how much value do you get from something, and like that utility can change over time. Like imagine like a donut, and that first donut's amazing when you eat it, but then you have like a 10th donut and it's not as amazing, right? Like it's not as good because you're just had 9 of them and you don't need another one, maybe not. I don't know, whatever. But like this concept of utility and how people come to products for that and reuse them. So like some of the like microeconomic stuff is really interesting to me. That's what I love most about economics.
Mm-hmm. Sounds really good.
Cool degree. I mean, it's a cool field. Like you should, like, if you haven't had any exposure to it, like it's maybe a gen ed or something, but
yeah, because my past background is focused on a chemical engineer and also a semiconductor, so finance or economics is really like a stranger for me.
Sure. Yeah. It's one of those like life skills if you spend the time in it, because like knowing finance stuff is helpful. But going from chemical engineering to design, cool.
Yeah.
Designers just like come from everywhere, man. It's awesome.
Yeah, it's welcome. I know some people is from most people is from industrial design, and some are graphic design, but it's hard to find like from chemical or kind of the engineers from I think some Sandasha Hora.
It's Sandhya. Don't worry. It's
Sandhya. Sorry. Yeah.
It's fine. I hope I'm not. I'm clear. I'm at the gym. Sorry for that. I have a question, Anthony, about. Okay, I'm Sandhya. I'm a recent graduate from high school. I'm currently working with UW Hospitals as a UX and web designer. But I love to be a UX researcher more than a designer. So I have this question about as a researcher, if I after my research, I submit my suggestions on some improvements on a design. For suppose in an application, if I say that in your notifications, these details are important. You just don't give them out. Okay, you have 5 notifications, but instead the details are important. But the stakeholder gets back and says, okay, this is not our priority right now. We'll roll out in the second phase or third phase. So how do we deal with that? Do we just agree, or do we need to convince them, or how to go about that?
For sure, yeah. I'll give you my answer that I give to my students. My favorite answer. It depends. So if it's like something that is like a high priority and you believe it's a high priority, fight back, or at least like approach it from another perspective. Amazon is known for its like leadership principles. So one of them that we have is it's like these tenets that we use to like justify how we like operate as a business in our individual interactions. And one of them is like have backbone, disagree and commit. Like you have like a very strong like perspective and opinion, and both of you like have a conversation about that. But at the end of the day, you commit to whatever sort of schedule and solution that you agree with. And it's okay if you like disagree, but then you like move forward from that. So like sometimes you'll have to like participate in that way. If it's like a really important thing, then explain why it's so important. And then your stakeholder might be like, oh yeah, we do need that right now. I can't tell you how many times I've had a stakeholder like deprioritize something, and then I explain why it's so important, and I show them what happens in the absence of that thing. And then they say, oh yeah, that is phase 1, and sometimes it doesn't. Like you don't get to fit it into the schedule because you got a million other things you got to work on. So I wish it always happened, but it can't, unfortunately.
Yeah. So do you think that data comes into play?
Oh, for sure. Like data, anecdotes, like walk them through the logic of the absence of the thing that you're talking about, in addition to its inclusion. You can like draw connections to like other elements and say that this is like a rising tides effect. Like there's so many different ways that you could like spin that. Like part of this job is like being a lawyer, like where you present evidence to a court and then like try to sway a jury around your opinion and perspective on behalf of your client, which is your users. So like you could like view it through that lens and start to like, what do you have to do? You have to collect your evidence. You have to present in front of a jury. You have to like present to a judge, and like there are processes and procedures for that. And then there's like a defending lawyer who like also is trying to do these things and advocate from their perspective. So like you can use that mental model and try to do what a lawyer would do in those scenarios.
Understood. Thank you.
Of course.
Omar.
Hey, Anthony. Hey, Professor
Hi.
Rule. So, Anthony, the question I have is like, with the advent of generative AI, what exactly should designers keep an eye out for in terms of, is it the technology? Is it like, like when Web3 dawned on us like 3 or 4 years back, there was a change, there was a shift in terms of, the visual design side of things. So would you suggest as designers we should keep an eye out for the same with regards to AI?
Yeah, you should definitely pay attention to AI, like 100%. It's going to change the world and the industry as we know it. It already has to some extent. When I think about AI, like with respect to like its role in design, like is it going to take our jobs? Like, are we going to lose the ability to like make designs anymore, and that stuff gets outsourced to like other teams or PMs or whatever, and we don't have a job anymore? Like, to some extent, that's a little true. Like people who don't know how to leverage and use AI in the long run will be at a disadvantage to those that do, and may even have some of their tasks and abilities like taken from them as an expectation. But at the same time, like it's not going to like replace the human element in creation of something, even with like the tools that we have now, when you see things generated by AI, you can like kind of sniff it out, like you can kind of smell it and feel it. And it doesn't feel as good as something as bespoke and custom and handcrafted, in the same way that like in product design and in like a physical sense, like a product designer who like creates like furniture or what have you. There's this idea of handcrafted elements versus like factory made elements, and like people pay a premium for those handcrafted things, and they have a space in our world, but it's a shared world. So like you still need to like learn these tools and understand how they operate, but not necessarily will you lose your ability to do design as a result of them. Another like metaphor you could think of is like the calculator. When a calculator came out, like did finance professionals lose their job because of it? No, like maybe some tools like Excel allow people to do these more complex modeling and calculations on their own. At the same time, the expertise of the human doing it for other humans just made it so that calculators were incorporated into work rather than replaced by it. Same with computers. When like you can type something out on a computer rather than have to write it out on a piece of paper, it just enhances the ability of what we can do. But you gotta learn it.
Right. Yeah. All right. Thank you so much, Anthony.
Hi, Alex. I saw you joined the session today. So if you have any question, just prompt up. Okay, so here are other questions from these other students. You work with a variety of well-known companies like Amazon, Vimo, and Nickelodeon. Can you share any memorable experience or key learnings from your time working with this organization that have influenced your approach to design and teaching?
Yeah, sure. One idea comes off the top of my head at Nickelodeon. So we were making that like children's product, right? Where like you interact with like tablets and phones, and like you can like play along with the characters of a show. So a show might, say which way did you go? Like which way did the main character go? Left or right? And then like you'd tap on the screen and like, you got it right or wrong, and the show continued. So we were working on an interaction for a show, and I thought to myself, let's make like it was like a music episode. I was like, okay, let's like make an interaction where like you play drums. Like the characters have these drums, and they come up right to you to the screen, and then like you play them. So all of the adults that were testing this experience once it was developed around the office would pass around the phones and the iPads, and they would like be on the phone, and they would like tap it very lightly and gently because it was an expensive piece of technology, and that's what they saw as the people developing that experience. But when we brought it in for user testing, you might see where this is going. The kids, we had the iPad and we like put it in front of them and said, here's your iPad. And they didn't see an expensive piece of technology. They saw drums. And what's a kid going to do in front of a pair of drums? So they started smacking the iPad as hard as they could. And it was in that moment that I realized just how important it is to test with users and to have their perspective in your mind and the way that they will surprise you. Children are some of the best user testers because if they don't want to test it, they won't. If they like it's not interesting, they will like just use it in the way that they think and see it, which just gives you just a complete different perspective that someone who isn't a child like can't get at. So it really hammered home in me the idea that your users are just going to use your thing entirely different than you, and it's like really important to test with them and see their perspective. So yeah, testing's good. You should do it. Also, maybe don't make an iPad into a pair of drums.
Yeah, testing always give the surprising feedback because you will think, oh, why I didn't never solve that before when I do design kind of things, because user feedback is really authentic.
It is.
Yeah.
It was really fun and like humbling too. It's like, oh wow, I didn't even think of that. That's amazing. Like, it was like a really cool moment.
Yeah.
Not for the iPad.
Your portfolio includes not only the digital product, but also like board games called Found Employee and Emergent Genius. How does your experience design physical games differ from digital product design? And you find an overlap in principle between two?
Yeah, so the differences and similarities. I'd say the differences there. A physical product, like unlike a digital product, is like you ship it and you can't like edit it or update it. Like you can patch a piece of software, you can't really patch a board game. You can, and like an expansion, but it's a lot harder. So yeah, like it taught maybe a little less agility in like what we're creating and a lot more testing and like making sure that what we're printing and producing is like solid and rock solid. Whereas like in a digital experience, you have the flexibility to update and expand and move past that. So that was definitely one thing that I learned as a difference. A similarity, at the end of the day, you're still like making an experience for someone else, like as a player, for example. So like I think it really hammered home the idea in me of like you are not the people you're designing for. So a lot of game designers make the experiences that they want to see, and whenever you try to like give them feedback or like explain like why it doesn't work for you, it's harder for them. From what I've seen, I'm speaking very generally here, so like your results may vary, but from what I've seen, it's harder for them to digest and absorb that feedback because they're like making it for themselves. So like if you say that something doesn't work for you, you don't understand it, or like it doesn't like make sense, it's harder to like internalize and change that. Whereas like for designing digital experiences, or at least non-game experiences, because this can sometimes happen in digital games as well, but for designing non-game experiences, you get a little less removed for that when you start thinking of this as software as a service. Like it's as a service to the people that you were making it for. So I think that was like a pretty big carryover that I didn't want to come from the perspective of I'm making this for me because I'm making a game for other people to play it. So I didn't want to carry that, even though I did have like my opinions about like what I thought the optimal thing was. Like if I saw people use it and not understand it, then yeah, I had to make it differently. I'll give you one other one. One interesting element of like the game design that we were doing for Fun Employed, it's like a card game and you like have cards on it. You would read it and like you would read it as if it were like in front of you, and then you'd put it down on the table. But like the act of that is like it's written this way so that when I play it, it's upside down to you. So I didn't realize that until we tested it. So the reason why a poker card is double-sided is because when you put it down, there's the part in front of you and the part in front of your audience. So like that was like a really great realization when experiencing like that in testing. So
wow, that's amazing.
I didn't even think about it. And then just
cool. That's like find quickly. Is that how long does it take you time to find the solution when you find out the usability have some issue like this? Reverse reading kind of things, and then you think maybe you can use the poker kind of strategy over the cards.
Right. That solution was pretty obvious. So like that took like one playtest session. But sometimes, like for testing, especially like digital experiences, like it can take a really long time to unpack the complexity of something, especially as that ecosystem grows. So, I've had user testing sessions where like I was like, I don't know what we do, man. Like I don't even know. Like, and then you like figure it out, but it takes time. Or sometimes you don't.
Yeah, true. Us both, and the final question is, us both an educator and a practitioner in the field as a designer, how do you balance staying up to date information with the latest trends and technology in UX design, while also teaching foundational principles that may remain constant over time?
Yeah, I wish I had a good answer for you. I always feel behind, man. Like I don't know enough about AI. I don't know enough about Figma. Like stuff keeps changing every month. Um, yeah, I think like a good way to stay up to date, because like reading like all the articles and like catching up on that stuff is just so hard and you burn out. I think like mini experiments and mini projects. So like I'll give you an example. I'm not great at Midjourney and like generative AI, right? But my wife's birthday was a couple months ago, and we wanted to do a murder mystery like on a train experience. Like we had this little board game kit. It's actually like behind me somewhere. So we did this experience, and one of the things we wanted to do is dress up the room that we were doing it in to look like a train. And I was like, okay, well, a train, it has windows, and like, what are we going to be like driving by? I had no idea. So I went to like Midjourney and I started messing around with that. I started like thinking of prompts that could like make something interesting for this like set piece. And over time, I like learned how to like create prompts that had like a similar style to them, so that it could feel like each image was connected in like a world that we were like driving by. And I learned about this like technology that I hadn't learned about for months, putting it off because I had a mini project that it motivated me to do it. So all this is to say is like being able to find these moments of like learning strategically, like by saying to yourself, oh, I want to like, learn how to use Figma auto layout. Let me like make a little project that requires that. Maybe it's like a table or like, some sort of like dashboard oriented experience, or like I want to learn about how to like use AI in my job search. Let me like you see what it's like to put my resume in it. Project-based learning, I think like makes you learn better and also like motivates you to actually do it in the first place.
Got it. Yeah. So about the AI, because I saw some YouTuber, they say AI plugin in the Figma is really help to quickly create like this is a process. If I can recall, they will type the use case like as a kind of user, I want to do what kind of things, or use job to be downward to the ChatGPT, and then it would generate a user journey process or user flow, and then you can just copy the user flow to the plugin in a Figma, so it would generate the wireframe directly. Is that? Yeah, that's very incredible. And I was shocked when I saw the YouTubers announce like kind of features right now. And I'm thinking, damn, I'm gonna be replaced by the AI, because I've in the previous time I always like discuss with the engineer about the scenario based on the wireframe. So if they can quickly create a user flow and then generate the wireframe, where am I? How can I like?
And that's tough, right? So like let's unpack that a little bit, right? Like so I can make a user flow like really easily, right? Cool.
Yeah.
Can I make a second user flow that talks to that user flow? Can I connect these two user flows in the same system or product? In the same way that, and this is changing a little bit, but in the same way that like Gen AI like has struggles with like drawing the same character across like multiple frames or instances, or like different prompts or different worlds or settings, like it's hard to like build that into a product. You can do an instance of it, but can you do it consistently enough that A, it makes sense, and B, that it connects into the ecosystem that you're creating? And C, big companies like Amazon and other ones are very like hesitant to feed these models. So as a result, you can't use AI at these places because they don't want their proprietary stuff and confidential information going into them in the first place. So that might change in the future, but like even with the advent of AI, like how does it connect? are you even allowed to use it? And can you stitch it together into like an entire product experience? Not yet.
Yeah, not yet. Okay, I think I covered most of the questions, and I would like to leave to Hannah. If you have question, you can just like start.
Thank you. Hi, Anthony. Hello, Professor
Hello.
Wu. I had a quick question about, so I really liked your observation about the poker cards and how they're two-sided. I think that's such a minute and amazing observation because I've been playing, I love playing cards and I never even realized why it was
Me
like
either.
that. I was mind blown. But I wanted to ask you, are there any books, like small books on UX strategy? Because that sounds like a very UX strategy kind of observation. But I want to do more of UX strategy. So are there any books that you can suggest for?
Yeah, there's one. Let me grab it really quickly. So this one is by O'Reilly. They're the
Right.
they're,
The
they're
wolf.
the you know, the one with all the animals and stuff. So this was a nice one.
Oh,
UX strategy.
whoa, yes.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So
Okay.
you might be familiar with that one. But I like this one. It was nice to like read through it and check it out. So yeah, this one would be my recommendation.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. They're the ones who have written stuff about information architecture as well, if I'm not wrong, O'Reilly.
They got a lot of books. Yeah,
Yeah.
they're known as like the animal books. So like there's a polar bear one, which is the IA one, and there's like a bunch of other ones.
Oh, right.
This one
Yeah.
as well.
Those books.
Exactly.
Oh, right. This one.
There's the
Yes.
polar
That's
one.
really good. I love that book. Thank
Fun
you.
fact, when I was in General Assembly, we were called the polar bears because of that book. The teacher really liked that book and gave us the name based off it.
Polar bear. Hi, Professor Eden.
Yeah, sorry, I was holding back here, let students ask questions, but Anthony, a more philosophical one. So I like the title of the book, Art and Science of UX. How much of it is art? How much of it is science?
It
Like
depends.
how much, right, the standard answer. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on, the mix of those two, because it seems like so much there's process, there's science that you can follow to more consistently generate usable, useful, and delightful designs. And then there's this art of being able to do things creatively as well that develops through more studio-based experience over time. So would love your thoughts on.
For sure.
On
So the book's like scaffolded across like Nielsen Norman's like design thinking process of like the 6 steps that you go through. Like you empathize, define, ideate, prototype, test, and deliver, and that's like the life cycle. And there are different models that all mean that it's the same thing, just like sliced differently. So like I find that like a lot of this is like both of those things, right? Like, so I would say that like there's some parts that like skew a lot more artistically, like, oh, I'm gonna make wires or like, like make a logo, whatever. And then there's like some parts that skew a lot more scientifically of like this process of doing research and like asking the same questions and removing bias from that in order to do that. At the same time, like those elements, if we like get a little bit more specific into them, like also have art and science to them. So if I think about the wires, like there's like a scientific way in which I can lay out a page so that people like consume it in a way that I want them to. Like I can think methodically about that and even use data to support the places where I put things on the page. If I'm trying to do research, the art of navigating a conversation is very like artistic, where I like am trying to like ebb and flow and respond to my users and like try to see like the energy and like the pacing and like understand where they are in the process and think about them. So I feel like, to answer your question, like some parts feel like very one or the other, but they always have like elements of both, almost like a yin yang perspective. And it almost to me feels like a 50-50 because of that, because some parts will like definitely skew one or the other, but you still need both in all of them. I don't know, like, what do you think?
Yeah, so I mean, one of the things I try to emphasize is like there's a myth that there are just innovative, creative people out there who just like have the gene and the rest of us can't do it. That like, yes, there might be some skill that you picked up over time, but a lot of it is like process and learning the process and being able to follow it consciously or unconsciously. So whether it's science with empirical evidence behind things, we don't. in a lot of things. But I enjoy the field because it also does feel like there's so much craft and so much, if there is like knowledge behind it, it's just hard to articulate. And the best way to gain it is through intentional practice, project-based work that forces you to grapple with some detail that you hadn't before. So again, I like that mixture of the art and science. Like, yeah, there's some science, some process we'll teach, and we're going to do this in studio in conversation with others, because a lot of it is just expert practice passed down generationally or gained through doing projects.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that title like really resonated with me. It felt like authentic for like an introduction to like this field.
Okay. I think Alex have one questions according to AI we discussed before. So during in the job, is that okay to ask the company or supervisor, can I use AI to generate or for the kind of design kind of things? Is that a good way, or should I don't tell?
Yeah, I guess it, depends on like what you're trying to like use the AI for. Like if I hired a designer and that designer was like, "Hey boss, I'm just gonna like type in this prompt to this like AI like generator to make the wires for me." I would be like, "But you're a designer. Why do you like need that?" You know what I mean? Like I would be like a little bit confused about that. If it was like, "Hey, I'm trying to like find like a couple of recommendations to get me started. I'm gonna use this like AI thing to generate that, and then from there like have a launching off point," like that would make a little bit more sense to me. So I think it's like, what are you working on? Like, how is that branded to like your internal team of like, we're using this tool because you have to like justify it. And then what's the cost of that? Not just the financial cost, but like, are you giving away anything that we don't want these models to have based upon what we have? So like anything, I feel like in life, it's just like, why are you doing it, and can you justify it, and does it make sense in this specific instance? So
That's a good advice. Thank you. Okay, so since our session, I think we have a really good time to talk with you, and thank you, and only to share your insight with us and today. So your passion and knowledge have truly enriched our understanding of this fantastic field. We are so grateful for your time and look forward to applying what we are learned. And thanks again for your invaluable time today. Really appreciate.
of course, yeah, it sounds like Omkar does have one last question.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you for noticing that, Anthony. So I just had one question. What advice would you give for someone who's trying to work on an innovative feature for a mature product? Like, should the focus be more on visuals? Should it be on UX? How to find the perfect blend of both?
I think like if it's a mature product, there's going to be a lot of like concern over risk. So I think you'd have to demonstrate value before like you're able to get buy-in. So I would focus on like the business value of that feature, the data, like the impact for customers. It can be qualitative or quantitative. In that you could like be like, customers have been asking for this, or like we expect to like generate this much money if we do that, or whatever. So the visuals would help, but I feel like you have to sell the story and the justification of it. So.
All right. Thank you so much, Anthony.
Of course. Yeah, and thank you everyone for attending, and thank you, Chris, Adam, everyone else for officiating and all that. It was fun. I appreciate coming. And Omkar, thanks for connecting us in the first place.
Oh,
Thank you. Thank
Happy
you for
to
your
help.
time. And thank you, Adam.
Yeah, pleasure all. Thanks, Anthony. Great to have you join.
Yeah, of
Hope you
course.
have a good week.
Yeah,
Bye.
good one.
Bye, guys.